Good afternoon and welcome to 365 Days of Amazing Stories with Theo Mayer. Today we're on day 54 and I'm about to begin the story or the legend of the three beautiful princesses. Now, this story takes place again in Spain, and it begins with a Moorish king who ruled in the Alhambra in Granada. He was king of Granada, and he was known by the name of Muhammad, but there was a addition to the name. He was known as Muhammad the Left-Handed because he wielded his scimitar in his left hand, even though most people, of course, are right-handed. Now, it turned out that at this point in time, the Christians and the Muslims were basically at odds with each other. And we've all heard stories of the Crusades and just the warring over the belief in God. And so this was that time period. And the Christians inhabited a good portion of Spain at that point, as did the Muslims. And there were skirmishes back and forth that took place. And when these skirmishes took place, whatever could be had from the other was brought back as spoils of war. And this could be it could be goods, coins, gold, jewels, and it could also even be people. Now, it turned out one day when the Moorish king, Muhammad, was out riding with a bunch of his couriers. He was out on some business. And as he was riding, coming back into his kingdom was a group of Muslim soldiers who had returned from sacking a Christian frontier post. And they were coming back with mules laden with goods, but also a long string of people they were bringing back as well. And the king noticed one beautiful woman in particular. She was being carried on a low palfrey, and she was crying, but it was clear that she was from some well-to-do class because she was dressed very, very nicely and had, jewels on her fingers and necklaces and bracelets and a small little crown on her head. And she was just sobbing. And she had with her her duenna, or the woman who kind of watched over her, and nothing the duenna could do would console this beautiful maiden. And Muhammad became very interested in her. And being as he was king, he went to the soldiers that were bringing everyone back, and he claimed her as his royal spoils of war. He had her transported to his palace, and there he provided every luxury that one could imagine, trying to make her happy, as happy as he could. Unfortunately, it didn't really help, and she continued to cry. And so Muhammad enlisted the help of the duenna to try to persuade this beautiful woman to become his wife. Now, the duenna's name has been lost, her real name, but she was known as Caliga. And Caliga is another name for discreet. She was a discreet one, and true to the name, she was in fact very, very discreet. So Caliga went to work on this beautiful princess, and basically she said, what are you doing crying? Leave off from all of this crying. I mean, here this Moorish king is wishing to make you his wife, and yeah, he's a little bit old, but if you marry him, he's going to die sooner, and then you'll be a widow to decide whatever it is that you want to do for yourself. And look at this incredible palace, which he's allowed you to live in all of the beautiful gardens. And I mean, he's obviously very, very well-to-do and is sovereign over this entire area. I mean, what are you trading? Are you trading that horrible tower that you were stuck in on the frontier with your father looking over you like a prison guard compared to this? Look at this. And though, yes, he is an infidel and is of the Muslim faith, you marry him, not his religion. What is there to continue to be crying about? Well, I will tell you that the words of the duenna eventually had their effect on the princess, and she agreed finally to marry Muhammad, even though he was quite a bit older than her. And she settled into this life as the queen of this area and had everything, every luxury that one could possibly want. She even adopted the garb of, the women who lived in that area, the Muslim women, and beautiful she was with Muhammad at her side. Now, it turned out that in a short amount of time, she became pregnant, and when she did give birth, she gave birth to 3 daughters, not over the course of years, but at one birth. She had triplets, beautiful little girls. Now, Muhammad, as was true of most sovereigns, when they were having children, immediately sought the astrologers to find out what fate might be in store for these beautiful young women. And the astrologers, they looked at everything and they came back to him and said, daughters, they are precarious to have as children. It is true. But these 3 daughters of yours, it will be especially precarious when they come of a marriageable age. At that point in time, there should be no one but yourself to watch over them, and you should guard them well during that time. Well, that was pretty good news, and Muhammad thought, that's not so big of a deal. I have to watch over them when they become of age, and I've got 17 or so years until that time, so all is well. He went and did what kings do and kept busy with all the affairs, the royal affairs. And his wife, for the first few years, raised those girls. But unfortunately, she fell sick and died. Those children were the last, basically, royal gift that she was able to give to Muhammad. And Muhammad now had their care completely in his own hands. It was his responsibility. Now, Kaliga, the duenna, had continued on, and with the queen, and now that these daughters were born, Muhammad asked her to look after the 3 daughters, and Kaliga took that up without a problem at all. Now, there was a tower, the Solobrena Tower, and it was on the coast of the Mediterranean, and it was a stronghold, basically in a place where if there was someone who was needing to be safely kept and away from danger, the Moorish kings, they would have that person put into the tower there. And the tower was richly afforded, it was beautiful, and there were gardens around it. There was a high protective wall. And on 3 of the sides there was land, but then on the 3rd side was the Mediterranean Sea. And Muhammad decided this would be a very good place for his daughters to be in safekeeping. And so he had them sent there for most of the years as they were growing up, this is where they lived. And they were kept away from most of the other people, and especially the opposite sex. Now, there was, as part of this stronghold, a place where the walls came, following the contour of the land all the way down to the Mediterranean Sea. And there at the sea, there was a pavilion that was set up. And it was high enough to see over the walls. There was a sandy beach walled in on two sides. And the princesses often went there on the sultry days, just to feel the cool breeze from the ocean, to be able to go diving into the ocean, cool down. And they were sitting there one day when a galley was sailing in. And they watched as it approached, and it came into the area that was right next to where the pavilion was. It anchored. And boats were brought to shore with many people aboard, and many of these people were in chains. They were Christians, again, that had been captured in some skirmish between the Muslims and the Christians. Now, the three daughters, Zeta, Zoraida, and Zoraheda, were the three daughters. Zeta was the eldest, Zoraida the middle, and Zoraheda was the youngest. Zeta was the one that was watching all of the goings-on as the men came to shore and the galley came close and was anchored. And as she watched, she saw amongst all of these prisoners 3 Spanish cavaliers. They were young, handsome, strong, like nothing she'd ever seen in all of those years of her life, being kept in and away from the opposite sex. She saw these 3 cavaliers, and she called to Zoraida and Zoraheda and said, come, look at these beautiful men. Oh my God, I especially like the one in red. He looks so gallant. And even though he is in chains, it looks like he's surrounded by his slaves. Well, Zoraida, the middle, she looked and she said, oh, but look at the cavalier in green. He is beautiful indeed. Now, Zoraheda, there was another man in blue. She was completely taken by him, but she was kind of quiet and timid. She didn't say anything at all. Well, they watched, the 3 princesses watched, as these men went out of sight, as they were led away. And they then reclined again on couches in the pavilion, and Caliga came in and could see that there was something different. And the girls told Caliga all about what had happened, what they had seen. Well, Caliga's heart was warmed, and she just out of herself began to share stories of her youth growing up and how it had been. And she said, oh, those 3 cavaliers, you can bet you there are some broken hearts back where they came from. And on she went, talked about the dancing that she used to do in the orchards. And one thing and after another, she began to share with the girls. And at a certain point, the girls, they were so interested in the stories. Some of them they wanted to hear over and over again. At a certain point, the Duena realized, oh my gosh, I'm creating this desire in their hearts. These girls have turned into young women. One day, Muhammad, their father, was sitting, having his breakfast, when there was delivered a basket to him, beautifully adorned with flowers, fig leaves, some vining, and within were 3 ripe fruit, a peach, an apricot, and a nectarine. The basket was from Caliga, and he understood its meaning. His daughters were of age. We'll leave the story here, find out what happens next. Hope you have a good rest of your day, and thanks for joining.